Okay, hello everyone, welcome to today's episode. I wanted to speak about the idea of karma. And how human beings have more than an ideological relationship with a living universe. I want to begin by saying that I am a human being among 8 billion on a rock in the middle of nowhere in a universe with a billion trillion stars. When I'm looking at life, I'm not considering that I know anything, because there is way more unknown than the known. As Socrates says, the only true wisdom is to know that you know nothing. However, there has been an accumulation of information, and our brains are in some sense like just a second guys, I gotta check the input. Okay, my voice should be louder now. So, pretty much we are a life form. We have a brain. This brain is like a camera, and as a camera it records information, and what information is in some sense shape, color, and space, dimensions of space. So our brain is in some sense just like the stomach, we can say, digests food. The brain consumes food. The brain digests information. Now, when somebody comes to speak about karma, it is the relationship of information which can be seen in two angles, one in time and one beyond time. There's something I say in some of the episodes, that there was this person who was asked about his history. He was asked about his past, pretty much, and the person responded very interestingly and said that there's 3 types of history he has. There's a part of him which is his individual history, then there's a part of him which is his universal history, then there's a part of him which doesn't have history, that is not in time. With this angle, with this approach, it's as if like the body has an individual history, the mind has a universal history, and what the ancients considered a soul doesn't have a history, it's not in time. If we were to think of the concept of karma, the concept of karma follows the idea of cause and effect, and it's a suggestion that what we are now, we had caused before this moment. So when one wants to understand karma from the dimension of the body, our karma is in time. When we look at our mind from the dimension of the mind is creating karma. It doesn't have a karma. And I would say the soul, or the inner witness, is free beyond karma. This is a very important distinction to make. Because the karma of the soul doesn't exist, at least in my school of thought, and the way I see it is that there is a part to every human being's moment where it is so instantaneous that it cannot have a karma or a sort of cause and effect, and cause and effect is the suggestion of time. That means it's as if there was a cause and the cause had no effect, we would not know time has gone forth. Right now, as a human being, I experience my body's karma. The body is an energetic container. A very wise rabbi gave a very good explanation of the image to the body, and he said that we are packets of energy. So the body is an energetic relationship. To comprehend the karma of the physical component of the individual life, one has to attain or cultivate mastery of energy. That means it goes beyond imagery. It's an existential relationship. I would say beyond the image of existence, an energetic relationship. So those who want to solve the karma of their body, one has to have a physical response to it. If you want to get healthy, you got to eat healthy food, for example. If you want to get you want to have more energy the next day, you need to have rest. But this is for the individual body. Now, if we went to the mind and we were wondering about the karma of the mind, this is where I would say I go a different crossroad than what I have heard that ancient yogis talk about. But I think it makes sense. I explain to the audience how yoga perceived it. Some schools of thought see karma in 4 dimensions, some see it in 3. I'm going to share a picture. So if we look at these infographics I found online to explain this, first of all, I mean, of course, karma means action, which is the whole idea of cause and effect. Or you can even say potential energy becoming kinetic energy. So we see that if we start from the left picture, the 4 types of karma, they call it Sanchita karma, a pool of all karma in reality. There's I don't know if I can pronounce this properly, Prarabdha karma, purpose and reason for present birth. There is the Agami karma. Now the Kriyamana karma, the newly created karma, like some systems don't perceive that. But I would use the metaphor of when it says pool of all karma, it's like the ocean. So Sanchita karma is like universal potential. It's like an ocean. And then the prarabdha karma, purpose and reason for present birth, it's like suddenly in the ocean there arose a wave. The wave is still part of the ocean. It's still connected to the pool of all karma, which some people interpret that as their Akashic records. Now, this wave, I guess I gotta move beyond the wave metaphor. Pretty much it's as if you are a potential being. You incarnate as a human being, because there's a separation of self and world. This self begins to not only have a relationship with the world, but also have a relationship of a separation of self and world, and then the self experiences karma in the world. So it's as if it's like one moment, we divide it into two. Now the two parts can have a relationship with one another, the self and the world. The desires that this self has is in some sense attempts of the micro to capture the macro, without the realization that the macro doesn't go anywhere for the micro. And then in the 4 types of karma system, there's the newly created karma. So that means these potential desires within the human being, they animate and they have consequence. That means it's as if one moment again divided into 2, self and world. The self lives in the world and begins having numerous relationships with the world. Some of these relationships it fulfills, some of the relationships it doesn't fulfill. And it goes on about living in this life. Now, the idea of enlightenment comes somewhere between Agami karma and Sanchita karma. That means it's as if like intelligence of beyond the universal nature is taking turns. It's as if first the self is moving the world, individual karma, then the world moves the self, universal karma. In my opinion, this whole thing of Sanchita karma and Agami karma, this could be in some sense 2 divisions. It could like literally 2 sides of a coin. From one side of the coin, the universe is living in the human experience. From the other side of the coin, the human is living in the universal experience. Now, right now I am speaking to the audience as a human, which means I have individual karma. That means something, some force in reality, even though I have, I would say, attributeless instantaneous knowings beyond time in my own inner realms. But I would say that there is an individual karma, and if you really look at this planet and you see a rock in the middle of nowhere where creatures have emerged and creatures have began communicating and speaking in some sense on this planet, they have become animate, matter has become animate, it feels as if there is something to do, or I would say something the universe is doing. That means sometimes in life you look at the world and it's too big to comprehend with an individual couple-pound brain. But one can still know that there is something going on, and this something that is going on can be a universal intention of design in this area of the universal sense. It's as if a person wakes up, they comb their hair or something, so similarly it's as if a universe woke up and its way of combing its hair is like civilizations rising and falling on this pebble in a light beam.
Namaskaram everyone.
Sorry guys, this was on mute and I was talking. I can't believe it. So guys, I don't know how long it was on mute. Okay guys, so this was on mute. I don't know how far. I don't want to go back in the video, so I'll just somehow recap what I said. Maybe it's going to be said again. Pretty much, I suggested that karma is like a coin. There's the collective, there's the human experiencing the universe, and then there's a universe experiencing the human. Now, I went to the second diagram to the right, and how it says Sanchita karma, that is like the accumulation of karma before one's life. This potential of karma okay, 3 minutes it was on mute. So, alright, whatever. So, guys, I think this is a important episode. But I said that I'm going to make it only for members only. Whatever. So we look at Sanchita karma, it becomes Prarabdha karma, and it says you acquire body based on your tendencies in previous life. Then you animate as a human being. It says karma is the glue between your body and the soul. That means the relationship of soul and body is, believe it or not, it's like cause and effect. The soul is a timeless cause, the body is an effect in time, I would say. Now, this potential from previous lives, the Sanchita karma, the ocean of all karmic phenomenology, from the universal karma, let's say, we went to the individual karma. Now, this Prarabdha karma, it dissolves. So think of it as if you had Prarabdha karma points based on how you lived in your past life. And it's as if a seed was planted in a past life, and in this life it's coming into fruition. And once you appreciate the fruits of it, it's as if you're done with that episode of cyclical existence. So our previous karma dissolves and new karma is accumulated. Then this new karma, as it becomes agami karma, that means we attain desires we attain unfulfillment. So it's as if we fulfill past desires from previous lives, and this is, of course, karma comes from a yogic ideological system. And the unfulfilled karma, which is in some sense what an individual wants from a universe, it goes back to what the universe wants from the individual. I honestly feel there is this sort of relationship. We think we're here only as human beings having a relationship with just as an individual, but the more and more the species steps into the future, it's going to realize collective natures of being. So what that means is people probably, this is my prediction, that as we go forward in time, people are going to, in some sense, find more and more moments throughout their life where instantaneously they will feel like everything. More and more, more and more, more and more. Even past the cyberspace era, which is artificially going to create that collective mind. The individual becomes conscious of the universe and establishes a relationship through language and movement, through imagery and movement with reality. Once the individual karma has been completed, the only thing I feel left is the collective karma. The collective karma means it's as if people have not been born into this world just to have an individual experience. It's like on the ticket purchased beforehand, metaphorically. There is an individual levels of experience, and then there's collective levels of experience. In collective experience, there is not only, I would say, a freedom from embodiment, but there is an ability to create time. In some systems of thought, modern systems, I've heard that they use the concept of postulation. So what that means is like there's nothing in the space, and then from nowhere, in accordance to a past sort of alphabet of experience, there comes a new position. It's as if it's like the artist's mind is also an artist, you know, and it's like this, or I would say poetically, the soul is an artist of its mind, you know, and based on how the mind is drawn, the body can be experienced, or the body will have a sort of shape, you know. Sometimes when I see people in this life and what happens to them, it's very strange, but it gives you a sense of what they have done before. You know, if you see someone with a buzz cut, it's as if they've cut their hair before. It's as if an experience happened before. Now, when the child is born from the secular mentality, it's as if we treat it as a tabula rasa, the mind, a blank slate. But I would say it is not the case. We bring into this world all the worlds that have journeyed through us so far. The body is created, the mind is creating, and the soul is witnessing, the attributeless soul, the unknown soul. So when we look at knowledge, knowledge was created in this world. Our understanding of meaning was created. And when you look at creatures that speak language, it's as if it's a creation inside a creation, or a dream inside a dream. So the karma of words most likely confuses the karma of direct experience. And if we look at this chart of Sanchita karma becoming Prarabdha karma, and then this leading to unfulfilled desires, which becomes Agami karma, you know, I see this, if I was to use myself as an example, it's as if in previous lives I had built up the momentum of communicating towards a global intent. I will tell you that from the beginning, where I would give these talks, even though I was preferenceless, but I remember there was this bench without a back, without a backrest or something, there was this bench, and I would walk on it as if it was a podium, and there was nobody there, and there was just a grass field in front of the bench, and I would envision in my mind that every straw of grass was an audience member, and it was as if I was talking in front of the world of my eyes. You know, some people feel they have relationships in the world with stuff in the world, but I would say the mystic, or those who have remembered a sort of they have responded to their spiritual nostalgia. It's as if you no longer have a relationship in the world, you have a relationship with the whole world as a whole moment of being. So guys, for 30 minutes I'll make this episode public. I think there's some important ideas. So anyways, to continue, I was using myself as an example. So it's as if there was Sanchita karma, a universal intention beyond my human personality, or accumulated, I personally feel maybe, I mean this is really totally personal to my inner realms, but I feel maybe I've been an individual on this planet just a few times, but I have been before this life. And so it's as if unfulfilled desires suddenly, like seeds planted, they come into fruition, and it's as if after I have given these talks, there's the option of either new desires to arise, or before or how would I say it, through the completion of past cycles of universal intent upon the individual human, it's as if the individual human returns back to the universal state. The term self is relevant to individual bodyhood, and also how there is a mind accompanying the body, and this mind animates, I would say, the subtler planes of meaning. So it's as if our mind is the context to reality, and our body is the most immediate concept of it. And as I was saying earlier, the three dimensions of there being an individual history, there being a universal history, there being a universal history, and there being, in some sense, a part of the soul where there is no history to it. It is not in time. So I would say it's a remembrance of the timeless through time, and when the timeless is remembered, the game of self and world, or world and self, ends. And it ends in a way where it's as if it had never begun, as if you had never been in time, even though the experiences of time were taking place. For the body is not an idea, so there's a physical relationship, a direct experientially physical relationship with the body. For the mind, where the universe is contained in, I would say, a subjective experience is taking place. The mind is in some sense like a film, and we are an actor, and it was in an interesting way we can direct our minds. But when you look at our bodies, it's as if the mind is directed and then the body follows, right? But physical existence, everybody's born with a sort of uniqueness. It's as if the person wanted to see what their karma is, and all they had to do was look in the mirror and realize. So the body, you cannot have an ideological relationship because it's not an idea, it's just matter, it's just stuff. But the mind, which is moving, which is engaged in universal karma, I would say that's where the ideological relationship is. And beyond ideology, there is no karma, and there is no classification of universe and self, in my opinion. There has been times where I have selflessly, in an instant, felt I am being everything. By the nature of just being, one cannot be an individual, so it's as if you feel, or I would say, maybe it's possible to say, that the karma of the universe is, or the karma of the human being is the universe, and the karma of the universe is beyond how the universe is being. There are times I wonder about my agami karma. I wonder about how will I roam the space-time continuum in the future. And the most remarkable thing is that sometimes I don't see an image to it. So I feel that beyond this life, if we, in some sense, fulfill the desires of past lives, and we realize that all those desires lead to a remembrance beyond the universal mind into pretty much the witnessing soul. The ungraspable, that if when there is no self, who can have karma, what can have karma, and if there is not a self, where did the world go? You know, after looking at the Sanchita, Prabdha karma, and Agami karma of an individual, you can't even think about it. It's as if, what is the karma of the universe? What is the karma of the planet? You know, for example, there was this movie Armageddon where the karma of the planet was a meteor was hitting it, you know? So it's as if we're wondering about what is behaving, what is having a relationship with the person, and then what is having a relationship with the universal personality, the universal position. And if the universe has a karma, how could the individual still have a karma? That means it's as if you feel you have karma, then you realize you're being the whole universe at once. And then all your individual karma becomes universal karma. It's as if it's not what's happening to you, it's what's happening to the universe in which you arose. So more and more as we go towards the timeless, we find a self free. It's as if freedom is dreaming of its elusive nature. There are many types of creatures, if I bring this back to the individual notion. Each creature has a shape, has a geometry. To understand the individual history, we look at the geometry of the moment. And in the life of the individual, if it chooses to see beyond the shapes of truth for its own eyes, it will access collective karma. For example, you can say, this is maybe not the best example, but it's what the example fits. It's as if there's a drunk driver and there's three other people, and it's as if in that moment, three moments have come into the karma of one moment. So as we experience in life more collective ways of living, there's also realizations that the significance of our individual karma is less. And an example of this would be, it's as if, for example, I was living in Iran and there was a sort of ideological freedom there. Then I came to Canada and there is a way more completely different ideological freedom here. So it's as if the collective influences the individual's karma with itself. And so something maybe in metaphysical thought, in mystical thought, that all those Bhakti yogis could not see and could not notice. That means if you just see this life as a sort of love is the ultimate truth, I feel karmically there is going to be a lot of shaky moments where the person doesn't know why something happened, but then they look at the sky and in some sense they shout to the God that is in some sense watching them. It can't even be seen like a Rubik's Cube where there is an algorithm It's as if karma is a sort of puzzle, and to escape karma or to transcend one's karma, it requires a sort of algorithm, and it could be a specific algorithm based on something specific the individual has done, you know. For example, I remember in my high school, there was this very wealthy girl, and for some reason she was the shyest person there, you know, even more shy than me. I was really shy. And she was the most shyest person there, and it seemed as if like it didn't matter what kind of karma she had in the present, her past had influenced how she was having a relationship with her present. So there could be a karma to the body, and the karma to the mind goes into different times. Do you know? For example, me, like when I look at myself, I'm like, I was this Persian kid, you know, who wanted to become a soccer player, and somehow in this life, when the concepts of meditation, or I had certain experiences that made me realize, wait a minute, how could I be the mind if the mind is changing all the time? If a person's mind changes all the time, how could we be the content of that? So something sparked or something activated in this life that made me in some sense care for what is going on behind the scenes of the observable, beyond the scenes of the sensory veil of perception. You see, because there is this concept of the exoteric and the esoteric. Regular societies you can classify them as exoteric, you know, societies, you know, and then we have esoteric societies where they're like kind of hidden and in the back, and their focus is not a materialistic agenda, it's an immaterialistic agenda. Now, my personal view is that there is a universal self that has a certain disposition. So it's like when you look at a person, every person you can look at and you can notice that their nature has a sort of disposition, a sort of way that their attention and intelligence is keeping them in the moment. And let's say that's the individual self's nature and disposition. Now imagine your whole universal sector, this Milky Way galaxy, this galactic sector has a sort of disposition, has a sort of nature, you know, and us having a relationship with a lifeless universe is in some sense a mistake, or is ignorance of universal intelligence, a sort of universal life that is taking place, you know. So abidance with the universal nature, or a realization of how the universe or how the world is happening before you're a self happening in the world. Abidance with that surpasses any sort of costume games in the shadows. I am telling you, this world, there's some people who they seek power. I've seen, there was this person you know, I went on, I went on this date, and this girl was aware that I have an interest in metaphysics, and I asked her, why do you why is the concept of how is the concept of spirituality real to you, or why do you even care for this idea? And she looked at me, and I could see in her eyes, and she very directly said power. That means her aim was to have power. It's as if she had completely forgotten about karma. She had completely forgotten that this is temporary. And so when can we find that those eyes that in some sense have never gone anywhere? It's as if the changeless sight, the unconditional intelligence. Because in yogic wisdom, they say that, sure, a person could have done some things in their past lives, and they could have accumulated abilities, and in this life, their abilities may come into fruition. But if you use the power without having a care to know of the universal nature of reality, then in some sense it backfires, and the consequence of that is that you become possessed by the power you put into the universe. As if somebody punching a wall, and then it's like there's a stress from the wall that comes back, an equivalent stress to the force that they exerted on the phenomena. So I would say that when the individual creature realizes that its individual karma is actually part of a universal, I don't want to say creature, but a universal intelligence, and once the universal karma is established, then the universal memory opens up, and this is where your creativity, or I would say your inner realms, completely shift, and they become more unconditional than the outer realms. That means in the outer realms, for example, I'm just this physical, biological human being, and I can physically move my hands, I could move my voice, I could move my sight, my attention, but upon the recognition of the universal memory, one comes into the attributeless presence of their being. That attributeless presence of their being, at least in my experience, has an instantaneous knowing, so no longer there is even a projection of thought. It's as if it's like we thought we have to get knowledge. No. Knowledge has nowhere to go. It is all here. And so the more we experience ourselves, as the New Age community says, in the here and now, come to the here and now, the more you realize that ability is the quality of being. So the ability that is not framed in a person needing something, or the person running after something, or the person desiring power. It's as if you realize that it's as if there's electricity everywhere in the walls, There is a sort of energy to phenomenology, and that energy has an unconditional relationship with how the manifest components, it's like as if an unconditional potential energy that never ends, that's not in time, and then there's a kinetic side, a sort of kinetic energy where this energy till the end of time has nothing else to do but change. So if in a changing world a person tries to play the games of it being an immortal or an eternal, then in some sense, and they do not have an awareness of how the universe is moving, it's as if the relationship with the logos, with that inner guiding voice that the ancient Greeks considered, which was like the Gaian mind. It was as if the planet, it's like we don't just, those people who are conscious of the logos, they in some sense, I was about to say yogos, guys. The yoga of the logos, yeah. But your relationship with the logos is your relationship with the freedom and the presence of the universe. Those beings who establish a conscious relationship with the universe, they have no fear. It doesn't even make sense to have fear. There is no self. It's as if the universe is moving before the self is. Now, somebody may ask, okay, Mr. Within, so you're saying there's an individual karma from the beginning of the life to the end of the life, and you're saying the mind has a universal karma, but you're saying the mind is in some sense creating, as if the body is created, the body is appearing as if it's moving in the space of the mind, so the body has the karma that the mind sets it. But if the mind is creating karma, what kind of karma does the mind have? And here is what I would say: to surpass your universal karma is a realization that if the universe wasn't here, truth would be. So it's a stopping of the creative endeavor. So the creative impulse of a universe, in some sense, resides like the wave, in some sense, becomes the ocean again. And the interesting thing about karma, I would say the most important idea about karma, where it follows the cause and effect model, is that whatever you're experiencing, you caused. So if the person is suffering, they are the cause of their own suffering. And if, in some sense, the person wants to be free from suffering, they have to cause their freedom. As if nobody can give you freedom. It's something where if you want to surpass your own karma, you have to reverse engineer back into the earliest moments of your intelligence and stand there waiting. So just a reminder, guys, in 9 minutes, this episode's going to go back to being members only. And I would appreciate the support for those interested. But of course, whatever happens, it's karma. And you know, in the Farsi language, there's this incredible, I see this incredible parallel where the word karma, if you were to kind of separate that word into two words, as if kare ma, kar means work and ma means us. So believe it or not, the word karma sounds like our work in the Farsi language. And I would say it is true. Some of the most fascinating moments of my life was to notice something that was more than me, whether in the inner realms or in the outer realms. In the inner realms, when I noticed it, there was such an overwhelmment that I stopped every opinion. It's as if you find a moment where something so important is happening, where you don't want your past, you don't care for your own opinions anymore, you just want to look at the direct experience. Now, can it be prevented, the accumulation of new karma? The way if this reality was like a puzzle, I would say it's designed in such a way where it's easier to accumulate karma than to not have karma. That means it's not possible to like stop actually living and thinking that's going to be enlightenment to karma. You know, the idea is that in some sense your identification with what is going on and the shift of that becomes a freedom of karma. So this is why I say some people feel they're not free and they're looking for freedom, and some people who feel they were not free realize that freedom was in the room before them. This is why they say enlightenment, moksha, is a self-realization. There's something true before we entered this room and about the room. And when we realize that about the room, in some sense, we're no longer in the room. You know, so, and it is this idea where some people entertain the simulation theory, the simulation hypothesis. They think we're in a simulation, or ancients saw it as a dream, and it's like, how do you get out of the dream? The idea, I would say, there's different ways. One way is you become the dream, so you cannot be in the dream. So it's kind of like how Christ said to be in the world but not of it. It's as if the world is not in the world, but a self is in the world. So when the world becomes yourself, you are free from individual karma. Hopefully these talks of mine have assisted that aim. But then there comes the universal karma and the freedom from the universal karma. And this is where I'm going to share something cool from yogic thought, where they say that I don't know the exact number, but it's something like 54 million years of like life in this universal sector of the rise and fall of civilization, species, creaturehood on rocks in the middle of nowhere and whatnot. It's as if these 54 million years, you can put an equal sign to are like 3 days of like Brahman dreaming, or like a god dreaming. So 3 days of like in Vedic thought of a specific god dreaming equals to 54 million years of like life, individual life forms and whatever. Now, if you think about it, whenever a person dreams, their dream has some sort of influence from the reality before they dreamt. That means when I look at all my dreams, even though some dreams have been strange, but most of the dreams have a sort of humanized context. It's as if like what I saw throughout the day and I sleep and I dream, it's as if all the influences on the day before have an influence on how the dream animates. So if we take in this notion that there is a universal self that is dreaming a universe of individual selves, then it's as if the type of content we find right now in this world is in some sense what the universal self experienced before dreaming. the universal personality. So it's as if in Vedic thought God is dreaming and we are inside God's dream as this whole universal sector. It's as if the content inside this dream has to do with what God was doing before this world. And I'm talking about God through the polytheistic sense in this episode, because I'm talking about the Vedic God. Vedic gods. Somebody said this, an incredible differentiation between polytheism and monotheism. Monotheism is everything is God. Everything is God's. That means there's an apostrophe between the S. And in polytheistic tradition, everything is God's. So monotheism, everything is God's, as if God is the owner of the reality. And in polytheistic tradition, it's like everything's just, there's so many gods. In one of the talks, I gave this example. That it's as if we are, I imagine there were like billions of beings, like imagine interstellar beings, that they decided to, as a giant project, to go on a rock in the middle of nowhere and in some sense begin building something there. So it's as if it's like, you can say it's as if just like we say, how would I say? If we say individuals have a global project, a planetary project, it's as if planets have a galactic project and galaxies have a universal project. And so if we chose to see individual karma beyond the sensory, in some sense it can be infinite. That means cause and effect doesn't end. And I've had moments where if I could just say a comment about God dreaming this world and everybody alive being inside God's dream, there's been moments where I've been alone and I've kind of looked at the moment with the presence of my whole moment, and I've said like, wake up. It's as if not talking to myself, but talking to the universal self. And this idea now I would go to monotheistic religions where they talk about the apocalypse. They talk about the day of days, the day of judgment. I would say that day of days is kind of like God waking up from the dream, as if the whole world shifts. Okay, so the episode's gonna become members only, and I'm gonna continue. And there's so many unknown variables in life. So many. That our knowledge is endlessly in flux. That means there is no such thing as shaped knowledge, because the shapes in this realm are changing constantly. And even if we do declare that, okay, we know this, I know that, that knowing is instantaneous. It has to be momentary. A person that is in the present alive right now says, I know what's going on in society in 2021, but a person, imagine 1,000 years from now on, like let's say a couple thousand years, it's as if it will not be the same moment. In my, I personally don't see past lives. I consider that the soul, like the school of thought that the halls of the school of thought that I walk in, I see that the soul doesn't have a personality. But if I was to say that, if I was to consider a past life, I would say the closest I have come to is I have looked through Rishi Vyasa's eyes. And the algorithm for that being was in some sense to create a backup system for the future. And if our future is in cyberspace, then that kind of explains my karma. But if the world has an evolutionary return to nature, that means, think of it this way, that Rishi Vyasa has the story where he writes the 18 Puranas, but yet he's not content, he's not satisfied. Like his soul, his being is not satisfied. And then the story goes that an angel comes to him and says, Rishi Vyasa, until you write about your love for God, your devotion to truth, you will not be content, you will not be free from the cycle of karma you're in. And Rishi Vyasa writes that book for the love of truth, and it becomes the Bhagavad Gita. And that's when he finds a sort of liberation. And I would say, if we now took the picture to a cyberspace context, it would be as if somebody in cyberspace talking about how life was in nature before cyberspace, before the technological encapsulation of identity. So you see, it's as if we are caught in the games of freedom, of trying to, as Terence McKenna said, the archaic revival, as if we're trying to revive the freedom of the past in our future, not realizing that the future will go on and on and on. And it could be that our civilization gets wiped out, and then again, as if the sun, the light beams of the sun are commanding, as if I am illuminating the world, and who shall see it? Guys, I have no idea right now how there's 6 viewers when this video is in members only, Now I would go more towards the title. I feel I've spoken about karma enough. More than an ideological relationship with a living universe. This is where I would say, guys, this is my personal view. It contradicts a lot of traditional ideas. In traditional, I would say, spirituality, they see a sort of levels to creation and evolving multidimensionally. as if you're going from level to level to level, as if the universe is a school, or you can choose to render it as a prison where you're accessing more and more freedom, or it's a school where you're learning more and more and more, and the classrooms don't end. Or if they end where they began. And so if you have this classroom mentality, it's as if you feel in this life the most important thing is improvement. Now, I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm just saying that my mentality is different. And the mentality I have is that this world, if you wonder about what is being kept as the most important value, it's life, it's the living, right? So if we are still seeking for truth that is ideological, or if it's just shaped, in some sense it is not to the caliber of being alive only, I shouldn't say only, but it's not to the level of being alive. So for me, for example, in my metaphysics, if somebody was like, Mr. Within, why are you alive right now? Why are you metaphysically alive right now? Or why are you existing right now in this moment? I would say, in my view, it's as if I am a guest. I am a guest in existence. And there is a host to existence, but the relationship in the lifetime is not to stay outside of the door as a guest and endlessly ring the doorbell, keep praying for it, or in some sense ignoring where you are. I would say for me, truth is a living experience, and it's as if this whole time I've been alive, I'm waiting for the host to show up. Now, a certain level of experience of this world is not conceptual, just like religions say God is inconceivable, so it's as if it's an inconceivable living. It's like an inconceivable life. And to me, the attainment of the inconceivable life is a freedom from all sorts of karma. You see, karma is like an ocean we're swimming in. It's like a point of attention, a drop of attention, moving in an ocean of attention, or let's say an iceberg of attention. And when this iceberg dissolves, when it melts, it realizes that it was the ocean from the beginning. So what that means is, like, we are starting from the created experience, the experienced, and then we are going towards the creator, the experiencer, the experiencer that is creating reality. And when you actually remember your universal memory, something interesting happens. You have so many attitudes that have nothing to do with this lifetime, which are accessible. So it could be an attitude, I shouldn't say it could be, in my experience, it's suddenly finding ways you've looked at things, but the things are not the same things that you've looked at before. So it's as if you notice the antiquity of your own unconditional sight. I am a person who, I would say, I wouldn't call it prayer or meditation, but I would say there are moments where it's sort of like an overwhelmment, where I feel what is happening at all. And it's as if like creatures are moving in empty space. And to me, the whole movement seems to be the divine influence in the room. It's as if it could be said that, as I was saying earlier, the universal self needs to wake up. It's as if the universal self that is dreaming of itself individually, once it wakes up, it's as if how would I say it? It's like life and it's like the concept of life and death, both of them ideologically die. It's like the concept of death dies before you die. That's the power of being. Those who access knowing through their being the unknown blesses them. It's an inseparability. So what I'm saying, it's like we're an individual known self, and then there's a collective unknown self, and the moment we realize these two are not separate, it's as if freedom automata, you know. And somebody could ask, all right, Mr. Within, let's say a person realizes they're the universe and there is no self being all selves. What then? What do we do with this individual body? What do we do with the mind that we that is administering this body to some degree? My approach, and I don't know if this is the best approach, but my approach is as if you give everything that you're given to see what else can be given, and eventually it reaches a point where you see infinity can endlessly serve itself. I remember I was in Rishikesh, India, and there was this enlightened person, so you can say, and I went up to him and I just asked the question, and I'm like, if we endlessly reincarnate, does that mean if the soul is in some sense eternal, does that mean that every lifetime we have to get enlightened again and again? Could enlightenment even be an algorithm, like a cycle of repeat, where the person's just incarnating to get enlightened, incarnating to get enlightened, incarnating to get enlightened? And he was in this kind of altered state, and he was like, yes, you know. And to me, I mean, sure, you can think of as if you've been here, as if it's the first time you're here on this earth, or you could feel you have been here so many times, or you could even feel that you are the space. It's as if the earth is incarnating in you rather than you incarnating on earth, or the earth is reincarnating in you. You know, it's like the person's like, I believe in reincarnation, but it's like, I'm not the one reincarnating. Are you kidding? And of course, people's nature communicates, you know. I've noticed something strange, that it's like when someone has an intention to help, you know, many people don't see that help. It's as if it's like, if you want help, you don't care to help, you know. And if the species feels it's unenlightened and it needs help, in some sense, it forgets that it has to help the other. You know, it's like we're the visible self, and then there's the invisible other, and our relationship with the invisible other is really service. This doesn't mean sacrifice. It just means that while you're living an individual life, you become conscious of the universal life, and then the individual life abides with the universal life. Therefore, the individual life is going in accordance to the universal will. The universal will is fascinating, because sometimes a person can't know if the universal will wants them here or not. You know, this is why expectations or too much desire leads to some sort of fallacy. You know, it's hilarious. It's like if a person desires something, let's say the person desires lots of money, you know, we say, oh man, this person's greedy, it's a bad desire, right? Some people say this. And so if you desire a glass of water, people are like, oh man, there's nothing wrong with that, you know. Or if a person desires adultery, it's like, that's a sin. But if you desire a glass of water, it's like, there's nothing wrong with that. So it could be said that it's the desire that makes you ignorant of how the universe is happening before you are. But if a person, let's say, becomes selfless, let's say you're someone who has been sitting still and silent in the forest to such a degree where your desires have vanished, they have evaporated, you know, then I would say it's not that desires finish, it's that universal desires come into the picture. So it's like after you're done with yourself, then there's what the universal self wants. After you're done with what the universal self wants, then there is, I wouldn't say freedom, but I would say it's like you begin experiencing the unconditional, and the unconditional cannot be a doer that changes in conditions. So freedom is free beyond dominion, is free beyond a certain domain, is free beyond the domination of forces into a result. It's like the politeness where you were about to walk into a door at the same time as someone else into a doorway, and in some sense you let them go in first. And so it's as if like the individual self and the universal self are walking into the doorway of the moment, and so the person can let the universal self walk in first, then they go, or they can go in first as an individual and then the universal self follows. If they go in as an individual, the universal self follows. They haven't been conscious of the universal self. Something that has been on my mind lately was I heard this thing that they say those people who suffer, they seek freedom. Those people who are free, they don't seek anything, they enjoy life. And when I say enjoy life, I would say there's an individual life you can enjoy, where for some beings, unfortunately in our species, chaos can be an enjoyment for them. But I would say when you begin enjoying life as the whole universal presence, then that becomes Satchit Ananda bliss, right? The bliss is not of an individual. It's as if after the individual reaches the finish line of enlightenment, there is no individual to get enlightened anymore, to be enlightened. It's as if the light is being in your eyes before you are being in light a creature. And of course, if I was to talk about the individual karma, in my youth, I remember there was this person who was my grandfather's friend, like one of my grandfather's close friends. And when I was very young in Iran, my family would go on these vacations, like 2-hour drive outside of the capital city Tehran into a place called Shomal, where a lot of people would go there to kind of rest and relax and enjoy the beautiful nature, the greenery. And I remember the whole family, like very large, I think it was like 12 cars, we all went to this it was like this cottage space and this part of nature. And this man who was my grandfather's friend, his name was Haji Sanaga. And he's of course past this world, he's not alive anymore, but I have a memory of him when I was young, where and he was a very religious man. He was similar to my grandfather. My grandfather was more like an industrial kind of business oriented person, but this Haji was a person who he had a special karma with nature, guys. Like I would say he was like the closest person I've seen to a druid on this earth, And I remember there was a moment he calls me over and he's like, hey, watch this. And there was this giant log, and he taps one side of the log and opens his hand, and this like something like a lizard or something comes and stands on his hand. It was such a mind-blowing thing for me to see, right? And there was another moment, this was in front of everybody else, where he just had like him and my grandfather had captured this bee, this small bee, inside like this, what do you call it, a sieve that was there on the table. My grandfather had caught one bee, and this guy Haja Sanagha, I don't know what he does. I don't know if he like added honey to his tea or something, but suddenly you saw so many bees just come and stand on the edge of his cup, just around his cup. And there was something where years later, I was like, whoa, what was happening there metaphysically? And it suddenly dawned on me. He could hear the universal self, and he could even intend his will upon it. We see a lot of themes where the person's like, believe in yourself. There was this show called Naruto where the character's like, believe it. Everything he would say believe it. He's like, I'm going to defeat you, believe it. And he had this sort of belief in himself. But I would say the superior belief is not that you're believing in yourself. You're believing in the outcome of your universe. And so my intent when I give these talks, I feel sometimes I'm not a person giving these talks. I am a memory from the future giving these talks. And so the calling of the advanced civilization cannot be avoided. Eyes will not just open beyond themselves. The universe will open its eyes too. So beyond an ideological relationship, one has a relationship with the presence of their moment, in accordance to how their psychology is set up. They find freedom. When a person, what it is, you can also use this analogy that it's like the whole world is like a body. It's like an organ, it's like a biological body. And when there is something wrong that happens, it's like white blood cells arrive, to handle the infection, for example. The bacteria that's invading the body, right? So it's as if there is a sort of natural law, a law that surpasses what the human mind can conceive. And it's as if when the individual loses balance, it's as if they've lost their balance in the universe. It's as if the universal balance is superior. Anyways, guys, I'm going to go into a quote tunnel of karma. And then if there's questions, I'll respond. If there isn't questions, then thank you for listening. And the eyes will go forth, regardless of what happens, regardless of what we desire or don't desire, regardless of what we accept and reject. It's like the law of this universal sector. Happen. Go forth. Alright. So there's let's see, this quote tunnel. Wayne Dyer says how people treat you is their karma. How you react is yours. Chanakya says a man is born alone and dies alone, and he experiences the good and bad consequences of his karma alone, and he goes alone to hell or the supreme abode. Vinoba Bhave, B-H-A-V-E, his last name, he says, though the names karma, yoga, and sannyasa are different, the truth at the heart of both is the same. Hermann Hesse says the marvel of the Bhagavad Gita is its truly beautiful revelation of life's wisdom, which enables philosophy to blossom into religion. Frederick Lenz says when you practice selfless giving, you're in balance and harmony with everything. Exactly. This one quote from Frederick Lenz, guys, is pretty much saying like what I was saying, that it's like the service to the universal self is the freedom of the individual self. And it's as if you are playing the part that the universe has bestowed you. Frederick Lenz says, be kind, be loving, be generous. Give of yourself, give of your time, and you'll be free. It's the oldest secret, the one that's most often forgotten, and that is to have fun through giving. And guys, you know who can give? You know who are the beings that can give? Those who have enough. They have attained contentment. That is why they can give easily. That means they have attained freedom of their self. So the only thing left is the collective self to serve. Swami Vivekananda says Jnana, Bhakti, Yoga, and Karma. These are the four paths which lead to spiritual freedom. One must follow the path for which one is best suited. But in this age, special stress should be laid on Karma Yoga. Frederick Lenz again says, when you do something for someone else, it's for you. When you do something for yourself, it's for someone else. Frederick Lenz, oh my god, all these quotes from Frederick Lenz are... Swami Vivekananda says, now is wanted intense karma yoga with unbounded courage and indomitable strength in the heart. Then only will the people of the country be roused. And I feel the greatest karma yoga is to build an advanced civilization that becomes the great backup system that even though individuals fail, the collective will not. The outer realm collective will not. Swami Vivekananda says the very reason for nature's existence is for the education of the soul. Swami Vivekananda says you need not worry or make yourself sleepless about the world. It will go on without you. Swami Vivekananda says it's a very hard thing to understand, but you will come to learn in time that nothing in the universe has power over you until you allow it to exercise such a power. Swami Vivekananda says the help which tends to make us spiritually strong is the highest help. Next to it comes intellectual help, and after that comes physical help. Swami Vivekananda says the goal of mankind is knowledge. That is the one ideal placed before us by Eastern philosophy. Pleasure is not the goal of man, but knowledge. Pleasure and happiness come to an end. It is a mistake to suppose that pleasure is the goal. But once you have knowledge, I would say the experience of knowing is bliss. Swami Vivekananda says, although a man has not studied a single system of philosophy, although he does not believe in any God and never has believed, although he has not prayed even once in his whole life, if the simple power of good actions has brought him to the state where he's ready to give up his life and all else for others, he has arrived at the same point to which the religious man will come through his prayers and that philosopher through his knowledge. And so you may find that the philosopher, the worker, and the devotee all meet at one point, that one point being self-abnegation. Because once, if you realize the universe is alive, then what was it that you thought was you in the universe? Swami Vivekananda says absolute equality, that which means a perfect balance of all the struggling forces in all the planes, can never be in this world. Before you attain that state, the world will have become quite unfit for any kind of life and no one will be there. We find therefore that all these ideas of the millennium and of absolute equality are not only impossible, but also that if we try to carry them out, they will lead us surely enough to the day of destruction. It is a weakness to think that anyone is dependent on me and that I can do good to another. This belief is the mother of all our attachment, and through this attachment comes all our pain. We must inform our minds that no one in this universe depends upon us. No, not one beggar depends on our charity, not one soul on our kindness, not one living thing on our help. All are helped on by nature and will be so helped even though millions of us were not here. The course of nature will not stop for such as you and me. It is, as already pointed out, only a blessed privilege to you and to me that we are allowed, in the way of helping others, to educate ourselves. This is a great lesson to learn in life, and when we have learned it fully, we shall never be unhappy. We can go and mix without harm in society anywhere and everywhere. And this means it's like, I think what he's, what's another way I could say what Swami Vivekananda is saying? It's as if the act of selfless service to others is serving your own universal self. So the freedom comes from your own universal self, rather than the individual selves being equal without an attention to them, to their own nature. Swami Vivekananda says, "No man is to be judged by the mere nature of his duties, but all should be judged by the manner and the spirit in which they perform them." And you know, this reminds me of this show called, Rurouni Kenshin. I could be saying the name wrong, but it's pretty much this samurai who accidentally in a previous sequel of the movie, destroys his wife, accidentally kills his wife in a battle with some other opponent. The wife suddenly jumps in the middle, and in this third sequel, the brother-in-law of his wife is seeking his revenge, and the brother-in-law has become this next level bad guy figure. And suddenly there's a scene where him and the brother-in-law are fighting, and this Kenshin Rurouni, I forget his actual name, maybe I'm saying it right, I don't know. But this Kenshin guy finds himself in a position where the brother-in-law completely beats him up, and there is a point where he is in such sorrow, Kenshin, that he doesn't want to fight, but then he notices something wrong with the attitude of the brother-in-law. And there's this incredible scene in filmography, I would say, where this warrior, this samurai warrior, is in some sense, he looks at the brother-in-law and he says, "You are justified because of what I have done, for example, to what happened to your sister and all the other things, but the way you're going about to bring the justice is wrong. So it's not sometimes what we're doing is wrong, it's the way we're doing it that brings forth a karmic turbulence where the universe then responds." Swami Vivekananda says, just as inequality is necessary for creation itself, so the struggle to limit it is also necessary. If there were no struggle to become free and get back to God, there would be no creation either. It is the difference between these two forces that determines the nature of the motives of men. There will always be these motives to work, some tending towards bondage and others towards freedom. Beyond our ideologies, guys, I'm going to end the quote tunnel. Beyond our ideology, the world is happening and it's happening in ways where it's all phenomena is simultaneously happening. One can choose to see reality as a singular event, one can choose to see reality as a dualistic event, and one can choose to see reality in some sense as an infinite event, and one can choose to see reality as void. That means it's not an event even. The viewer of karma is not in karma, the observer of karma. And I feel that in every human being there is an attention, that source of their attention is watching the whole moment, everything that's being in it. So if you realize your ideology is a part of the moment and the whole moment cannot be just a part of it, then in some sense there is an instantaneous freedom. But yet the responsibility in this life as a doer, it's as if the actor on stage or on a theater performance, once the actor and the theater is complete, the actor bows to the universe that it has been a part of, and in some sense the curtains are pulled. And then from a state of intensity, it goes back to a state of simplicity. And I find, just as a safe measure, every human being has to study the simplest state of their being and the most complex state of what their being, which is what they do. And then perhaps freedom is its own truth. Thanks for listening, guys. I hope this episode was helpful. And beyond karma, as Rabindranath Tagore says, beauty is truth, seeing its reflection in a perfect mirror. Oh, I'll say it again. This is the exact quote. Beauty is truth's smile when she beholds her own face in a perfect mirror. There we go. Thanks for listening, guys. I hope this episode was helpful. Much blessings and namaste.